believe in the ripple effect.
What's up? Another episode of the Ripple Effect Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Ricardo Franz, also known as Ricky Franz, and a great episode for you today. Today, I'm in a great mood because I just did my 400th episode with fan favorite Dr. Jessica Rose, and we had a amazing conversation as usual. We went deep in so many different topics, so I'm super excited about releasing that 400th episode. I also been getting a lot of positive feedback about my recent episode with Brandon Thomas from the Expanding Reality podcast. Amazing conversation. So if you haven't listened to my previous Ripple Effect podcast, episode 398, right? Because this would be 399. Definitely go back and check out that conversation. It was a great conversation. I also did a recent appearance on the Generation Z podcast. Check that out. Those guys are super smart, super fun to talk to, and another one of those interviews that I really hope people go check out because they're doing awesome work. Now let's talk about today's episode. I have an amazing show for you today. I have Sergeant Jesus Cano and attorney Brian Festa, and we're going to share the sergeant's story and his battle with the U.S. government and the military. Due to the vaccine mandates, he's being represented by my good friend Brian Festa, who's an attorney and one of the founders of We the Patriots USA. And they're also trying to gather some money to help pay for this lawsuit. And the reason why this lawsuit is important is because if one person wins in court, then it could set a precedent for future lawsuits. Also, some weird stuff happened during this interview. I don't know if you guys will notice it, and maybe me highlighting it might cause you guys to notice it. But there was and I went back and couldn't find it, which only made it a little bit weirder. But I've been having a lot of conversations about like reality and death and life after death, spiritual topics and that type of stuff. And as some of you guys know, because I think I've talked about it briefly on the podcast, I haven't lost anybody close recently, but my wife throughout the last couple of years has lost a lot of people. So we've been dealing a lot with the topic of death and really how to handle it, and asking those questions about what happens after life and all that type of stuff. And during this interview, there's twice that I saw orb, one of those little white things that you see when you take a picture or when you're recording something, and it distracted the hell out of me. And you probably have heard it recently, like I sounded a little nasally of late. So I haven't been feeling that great of late, and mentally I feel like I had a little bit of brain fog. And then with this orb that twice I saw in the camera, it one time showed up at the bottom of the screen, and then another time it looked like it floated from, what did it look like? From my left to right, but it stopped on me and then continued. But it obviously was distracting because I've never had any type of spiritual or supernatural experience. So I seem a little off. That was a huge distraction. And if somebody happens to watch the video in full and knows exactly when it happened, send me the timestamp to let me know when it happened, because I'm intrigued with rewatching it. I rewatched a bunch of the interview around the area where I thought it happened, and I couldn't seem to find the spot when it happened. So that was kind of weird to me. That only freaks me out even more. I'm like, how did I know for sure that I saw it, and yet I can't seem to find it in the video. So just wanted to share that with you guys. Now to the business, right? This is a value for value show. If you get some value out of the show, please consider contributing something. If you can't contribute financially, consider contributing just by reviewing, sharing, telling people about the show, whatever video platforms are on, whatever social media platforms are on. subscribe to the Ripple Effect podcast or find me personally if I'm on those platforms. And you can find all this and more on the rippleeffectpodcast.com. Check that out, hit support, and you can find our Patreon page, our PayPal account, our crypto wallets, our merch store, our Rockfin channel. Rockfin's a video platform, but we get some compensation for you viewing and listening to the show on there. And then also, last but not least, the University of Reason online courses. And you can find links to that in the show description. If you're interested in taking an online course that will help expand whatever skills you may have, if you're interested in critical thinking skills, if you're interested in philosophy, history, if you're interested in sales, if you're interested in basically being a part of a community that can help find that thing you're interested in, if you're not sure where your niche is in the world, if you're at a crossroads in life and you're doing something unfulfilling, please consider going down to the show description, click on University of Reason, sign up, and you helping yourself can also help support the Ripple Effect podcast. And Richard Grove was recently on the podcast some episodes ago, not too long ago. So please go back in the archives, check out that episode. We go much deeper into what the University of Reason is. And you can learn a little bit more about it. Also, if you guys want to have Sergeant Kano on your show, if you're a podcast or a content creator and you're listening, please reach out to Brian Festa at WeThePatriotsUSA.com and let him know. Thanks, guys. See you on the next one. Peace.
Sergeant Jesus Kano is an Army Sergeant First Class. He has a very honorable 21-year military career. He had 3 combat deployments. He had also 1 mobilization to Fort Lee. He has served his country honorably, has put his life on the line for you and I so that we can do what we're doing here, okay? And he is being treated, honestly, at this point, like a second-class citizen, and is in danger of being discharged from the Army, not honorably, not with honors, because he's refused the shot. And in addition to that, he's going to lose his GI benefits that he worked so hard for. So normally in military, you can do 20 and out, right? He's at 21 years. The reason he has to do more time is he transferred the GI Bill. He came in under 9/11, the GI Bill. He transferred the GI Bill to his dependents, to his children, so they can go to college now because his children are college age now. So he transferred the GI Bill to them. When you transfer it to your dependents, you have to commit to like an additional, 4 years or whatever it is. He had, I forget how it exactly worked with the credit he had or something like that. But he'll be able to retire with full benefits and honors and everything within the next 1 year and 2 months or something. Just a little over a year he has left. But they're telling him if he doesn't get the shot, they denied his religious exemption and he has a period of time that he's going to be, if he doesn't get it within this period of time, he's going to be discharged. Like I said, not honorably. It's not a dishonorable discharge. The best he can hope for is something called the general discharge, where he doesn't get, it's not going to be coded though as an honorable discharge. And he'll lose his GI benefits. He'll have to pay back actually what they paid in benefits to the college. He'll have to pay the military back for those benefits. So that's what he's facing right now. We were just absolutely horrified by this when we read this email. This came in from Sergeant Kano lives in New Mexico. Excuse me. I almost said Mexico because he is actually a Mexican immigrant. His parents brought him here, I think, when he was 4 years old. He became a citizen, lived out the American dream, joined the Army to give back to the country that was so good to him, that gave him citizenship. He's just a wonderful man. If you talk to him, he can tell his story. He's a great guy. And, he decided to dedicate his life, his career in service of this country. And now this is the way he's being treated. So we decided to take on his case, to stand up for Sergeant Kano and say, listen, you've put your life on the line. You've sacrificed for us. Let's give back to you now. So We the Patriots USA is getting behind him. We have a slogan here at We the Patriots USA is when you stand up to tyrants, we stand up for you. And that's what we're trying to do for Sergeant Kano, but we need to raise significant funds. The legal expenses have been quoted to us at $75,000. So that's what we're trying to raise. Unfortunately, it's been slow going. We went on the Steve Deace show just the other day on Monday on Blaze Network. He's got a great audience, a large audience, but still so far we've only raised, I think, just over 10,000 or just around $10,000. So we still have a long way to go to raise enough funds for him. And so we're trying to get the word out everywhere that we can. So we appreciate you bringing us on, Ricky. Please, anyone who's listening to this who wants to support him, please go onto our website at wethepatriotsusa.org. You'll see there's a picture right up on our website, says click here to support the Sergeant Cano's lawsuit. And you can donate right there. We would greatly appreciate that. We've got a long way to go in donations, but this could set a precedent. If we stand up for him and we're able to get this denial overturned with the Army and protect his rights, it could protect so many others, especially if we get a federal court decision against the Army on this. It could protect so many other service members. So it's worth it to do this. We think, we feel very strongly that it's worth it to do this. And, there's the reason it's so expensive, and a lot of people ask, people who don't understand legal expenses, first of all, don't realize that that's actually not out of the ordinary. Oh, I see Sergeant Cano coming in, great. But let me just finish my thought. That's not out of the ordinary. $75,000, number one, for soup to nuts. Any appeals, this covers everything. But also, there's complexities involved when we're talking about the military. Okay, when we're talking about military law and getting involved with their procedures. There's complexities involved that are not involved in a normal lawsuit. So this is going to be a dogfight, and it's going to be very expensive. But we're willing to do it for a man who has served for so many years for this country very honorably to protect and defend our freedoms. Sergeant Cano, welcome. I'll let the host Ricky V welcome you in now.
¿Cómo estás, Sergeant Cano?
Muy bien, ¿cómo está, Ricky? Nice to see you.
You too, my friend. So we were telling your story a little bit. Kind of a little bit of your background stuff, but we'd love to hear it from, basically from your mouth and from your perspective of just how basically your little bit of an origin story on where you grew up, how, you came to this country, much like yourself. I'm also immigrant, so I like hearing the backstories, and then also what led you to stand up for something that you feel like it is a fight worth fighting for that could potentially be very costly in your, for taking that stance.
Yes, thank you. Well, my origin story starts out in Mexico. I was born in Chihuahua, Mexico. And when I was 4 years old, my father decided to bring us up to the United States because you knew down in Mexico, everyone looked across the border and knew you could have a better life there. So my father brought us up when I was 4. So I was pretty much raised here in America, living the American dream. My father was a farm worker. So that's what I grew up in, living in rural areas. And then once I got out of high school, I decided to join the military. Not exactly, I was about 28. I did do some fumbling around before I decided what to do. So then when I did join the military, somehow in my stomach, I knew something was going to happen. And I joined the military, and I was out of basic training. I completed basic training in August of 2001. So then you know that 9/11 happened just right after that. So that was the feeling that I had when I first joined the military. And my unit was part of the second wave after 9/11. So I was stationed in Uzbekistan, and we had missions down in Afghanistan. And then I completed that service, came back to America. And then in 2008, I was called up again to train soldiers in the MOS that I had, which was 92 Lima Petroleum Lab Specialist. So went up to Fort Lee and was an instructor there at Fort Lee, training soldiers. And then also while I was there, I took advantage of the program that the military had and would help you get your citizenship. So I gained my citizenship, and that also helped me career my progression, because if you don't have a citizenship, you can't get a security clearance. So once I had my citizenship, then I could put in for my security clearance packet, gain that, and was able to move on past sergeant. In 2012, I got a call from my friend, another soldier that I had gone to, and at that time I was in a instructor battalion. But in 2012, a chief warrant officer called me up and said, "Hey, we need someone with your specialty. Will you deploy with us?" And I went ahead and volunteered. I said, yeah, I'll go with you. If you guys need me, if my country needs me, then I'll be there for you. So in 2012, I deployed again to Afghanistan, where we had missions throughout the theater in Afghanistan. And then after returning from Afghanistan, stayed home for a while. And in 2019, I was called up again, doing the same job skill that I did in 2012. So I deployed to Kuwait, and while in Kuwait, again, we had missions throughout theater. So we were in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Syria, completed that. And while I was there in 2019, I also realized that the GI Bill could be passed on to my kids. I knew you could pass it on before that, but I didn't know what the process was, because I'm a father of 5. I have 4 boys and 1 girl. And the thought of just having to pick one single child to give it to was a little bit difficult to me. But then I realized, I was informed that no, you don't have to give it to just one, you can split it up in between them. So that's what I decided to do. In 2019, I split it up, passed it on to my children. But what happens then is you also incur a 4-year commitment. I had no problem with that. I still plan to be in the military at that time for another 12 years. And then upon returning to the United States in 2020, COVID was happening. And because of COVID, this is where this whole ordeal started, with having to get the vaccine, even though we know and that they've proven that if you've been contaminated with it before, then you build up an immunity to it. And we've seen that if you even get the vaccine, you still can catch COVID, you can still spread COVID. So we look at it and think, well, what's the reason for getting it? So I decided, when they mandated that you would have to receive the vaccine, that I wasn't going to do that. So the process began to separate me from the military. And I have an excerpt here, that I would like to read to you from the COVID counseling statement that I received. It's just a little section, if you will bear with me. And this is what it reads. I am counseling you for the conduct noted above. And the conduct noted above is the refusal to take the vaccine. Continuing conduct of this nature may result in an initiation of a bar to re-enlist, administrative action to include your separation from the service, and or punitive actions under UCMJ. If this conduct continues, actions may be initiated to involuntarily separate you from service under AR 635-200. If you are involuntarily separated, you could receive a honorable, general honorable condition, or other than honorable discharge. If you receive an honorable discharge, you will be qualified for most benefits resulting from your military service. If you receive a general under honorable condition discharge or other than honorable discharge, you may be disqualified from re-enlisting in the service or for some period, and you may be ineligible for many, if not all, veteran benefits, to include but not limited to the Montgomery GI Bill, the post 9/11 GI Bill. If you receive general honorable conditions or other than honorable conditions, you may face difficulty obtaining civilian employment, as employers may have low regard for less than honorable discharge. So the reason I'm reading this is that the other pressure they're putting on us is if you don't receive the vaccine, then you'll get flagged. So if you're flagged, you can't receive any favorable action. And by favorable action, that would be items such as going to your schools, reassignment. That's one of the things they put in there. So we've noticed that the Navy has allowed their personnel to be reassigned to another unit, the personnel who don't want to be vaccinated. So the Army has fenced that off by saying, if you have a flag, then you can't be reassigned. And now the other thing is you'll also receive a general order of reprimand. The general order of reprimand automatically puts you in the general under honorable conditions. So after 21 years, 3 combat deployments and 1 mobilization, I will receive a GOMAR and will leave the military with a general honorable discharge.
That's got to be so frustrating. I mean, you literally have went overseas to fight for people's freedoms back at home, and then you come home and they rip your freedoms away, and it's like the things that you've been fighting for are lost. And it's I was going to ask you that actually. So that's the Army, the Navy, the Air Force. Are they all kind of handling it kind of similar, or you said some are? It seems like the Army might be a little less willing to work with you than maybe the Navy. Do you know if the Air Force is being more reasonable, or is this an issue that you're seeing with people in the military, all branches of the military?
Well, what I can speak to is what I see through the media and also in the Army side, and that's where I don't understand, because we all fall under the same category. We're all Department of Defense. So when you see one action going on with one branch of service, you think it would apply to the other branch of service. But then that's where also you get leniency on the Army side. So when you deploy, you'll notice that you'll go to forward operating bases. And depending on how the commander is going to run that forward operating base, that's how it's going to be run. I'll give you an example. When we went down to Ghazni, which was a forward operating base in Afghanistan, the insurgents were pacing off, meaning they were shooting mortars into the camp to see how close they could get, or how to adjust their aim to get to a certain point. And what they were looking for was the fuel farm. So they were pacing it off. And we asked, well, how come you guys aren't firing back? Well, that was that commander's regulation. He did not fire back. Now we went to another forward operating base called Airborne, and Airborne had a 5-second response time. As soon as you heard the alarm go off, 5 seconds later, you heard the howitzers, boom, 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 responding back to wherever the mortar came from. And that was all on the commanders to decide how they're going to run it. So you can kind of see how it breaks down, such as the government. The federal government is going to run it one way, then you move down to the local government and on the municipalities. So that's how it is. The generals they're going to put out their general order. And that's what I also have is the order that has been put out on how they're going to run this COVID issue. So right now we moved on to phase 2. Phase 1 was this counseling and the ability to submit for either a medical exemption and a religious exemption. And that's what I did. I submitted for a religious exemption. But on that religious exemption, you have, on the counseling, it states I have 3 days if my religious exemption is denied to respond to that. And then I have another 3 days to put in an appeal. So you don't have very much time, especially on the reserve side, because we drill 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. So unless you're by your computer, and myself, I'm a machinist by trade is what I do. So I'm in front of a machine programming parts or running parts. So I can't be checking my computer 24/7. When I do come home, I check it, but it takes some time to respond. And they know this, and that's why they put these dates on there, knowing, oh, these guys won't be able to respond, so their time will expire, and then we can go after them. And not everybody's like that. There's some commanders that are totally supportive of what you're trying to do, but they have to follow the guidance that was put by their superiors.
With your has your feedback been like? Has in general, do you think the majority of people are supportive of what you're doing, and do you think most people probably feel the same way? Or what's kind of the feedback of other people in the military? I mean, I'm assuming there's probably some chatter, people sharing their opinions on, hey, this is something we should all do, or hey, I'm completely okay with people having the option to choose what they put in their body, especially when it's a experimental, non-fully FDA approved. I call it a vaccine, but we all know it's not a traditional vaccine. It's a mRNA technology. Moderna's never made a vaccine. This is a company that we call it a vaccine, but it's really in their benefit calling it a vaccine. That's why I don't like calling it a vaccine, because they've never made a vaccine. They're not a company that really is focused on that. But what's some of the feedback? Has your peers been supportive, or have they had the same concerns you've had? Or
yes, we have several of my peers that do have the same concerns. But as we've seen how the media manipulates the system, is you're hearing that 98% of the military is vaccinated. But then when you go and you talk to everyone else, and recently they had a meeting where they were going over all the soldiers that were going to be pushed out because of refusal to the vaccine. That is a very high number compared to what the media is putting out. So I see this, and I do get support from my other service members, but there's some service members that are caught in a bind. This is their only job. And if they don't continue or follow the guidelines, then they'll be pushed out.
is there any luck with maybe hoping that things will loosen up? Because it does seem like even in New York, which is ridiculous, but apparently athletes are more valuable than everybody else. So athletes are the first ones who don't have to, people know the Kyrie Irving story. Now he can play at home. Athletes and entertainers don't have to be vaccinated to, to perform there. It seems like things are loosening up. Is there any hope that maybe restrictions will loosen up a little bit now that people are focused on other things and people don't seem as concerned or afraid of the virus and whatnot? Is there has there been any evidence of that?
Well, the evidence that I saw, and a coworker showed it to me this morning, was that a judge has barred vaccinations throughout the Navy. So that would set precedents for the rest of the military, the rest of the Department of Defense. So we're looking at this and seeing that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, seeing that people are realizing that something's up, something's not quite right. Why are you pushing all this? And that's a question I've always asked, is that the disciplinary actions I'm getting are under lawful orders. But the question I ask, if this is still being fought in courts, how is this a lawful order or a lawful, it still has to go through the courts. But that's how you run your system, is you force everyone at the beginning, and then later on you say, okay, I was wrong. Maybe we shouldn't have vaccinated everybody.
Right, and there's no turning back. Once these people get it, the damage is done. So it's not like they're going to be able to come back later and say, okay, take this shot out of me, out of my body. That decision that he's referring to, a judge barred the Navy, as a federal judge, just came out yesterday, I think the decision was, barred the Navy from discharging anyone because of their vaccination status. So there was that bad decision we had from the Supreme Court about a week ago that said the Navy could make decisions. The Navy SEALs, there were 29, I think, Navy SEALs that they said they could, who brought the lawsuit, said they could make decisions about whether to assign them, decisions regarding assignment or deployment on the basis of vaccination status. And everybody was all up in arms. And I said, wait, hold on. This isn't the big one, folks. So I was on the Steve Deace show with Sergeant Cano, as I mentioned on Monday. I also talked to my good friend Daniel Horowitz the other day. who has a show, Conservative Review, a podcast also on the Blaze. And they were both like really down on it, say, how can you have any hope, Brian? How can you possibly have any hope after this decision we just got from the Supreme Court? I said, well, that decision only applied to assignments and deployments. That doesn't mean that we're going to lose on the issue of whether or not they can stay in the service and get their benefits based on vaccination status, which is what Sergeant Cano, is fighting for. That is, to me, the bigger issue. If you want to decide, not to deploy them to a certain place, that's one thing, but just completely remove them from service and not give them an honorable discharge, or to take benefits away or make them pay back GI benefits, that is wrong. That is illegal, in my opinion. And that, I believe, we can still win on, despite the recent decisions. And so that decision that we had just yesterday, I think it was, from that federal judge, is very encouraging. I do agree, Sergeant Cano, that's a lot of potential for precedent there, and hopefully will help us in fighting for you as well. But this is why we need all these branches of the military. That's a Navy case. Now we've got an Army case. Someone else brings an Air Force case. We have these precedent, and so then hopefully it'll be throughout the military. But again, you're right, Sergeant. For those who have already gotten it, it's going to be too late. And now the military, if they're told by a judge, or the Department of Defense is told by a judge, a federal judge, that, oh, you shouldn't have done that, then they'll change the policy or drop the policy. But all those who gave in, what becomes of them? What becomes of their lives, of their families, especially if they're dealing with a serious adverse reaction like the one we saw from Katrina Hermes, who was interviewed by Taryn Gregson on our podcast just this week. We aired the episode with Katrina Hermes from the United Kingdom, who's a 28-year-old woman who is otherwise very, very healthy and suffered life-altering, very serious disabilities, neurological disabilities, physical adverse reactions, I should say, very, very serious adverse reactions as a result of getting the Pfizer shot. And so I encourage you to watch that. If you go to wethepatriotsusa.org and click on Faithful Freedom with Taryn Gregson, you'll see all of the episodes there. And this was the latest one that just aired. And it's really, really frightening what happened to her. And people need to be aware of this, because she said she got the shot, Ricky, because she didn't know any better. All of her friends were saying it was good. They were getting it. Her doctors were saying it was safe and effective. She went online and Googled it, which we know is the first mistake. She Googled it and went on Instagram. She tried all of her normal social media sites, and all she saw was good, safe. She didn't see any of the information that you and I are putting out, Ricky. She didn't see any of this. So stories like hers and stories like yours, Sergeant Cano, need to be told. We need to fight the censorship. I know you've talked about this at length. I almost said ad nauseum, but it's never ad nauseum because I want to keep hearing it. We have to keep beating that drum, Ricky. We have to reveal the truth. And your podcast is so important. Independent journalists, independent broadcasters like yourself. That is the lifeblood of American journalism now, in my opinion. You are the heart and soul of American journalism. The mainstream media companies, the corporations, they're all sold out. They're all bought and paid for. Pfizer's not paying your bills, Ricky. I know that for a fact. They're not sending you any checks, and neither is Google or YouTube or Facebook. All right. All they're doing is blocking you and censoring you and shadow banning you like they do to We the Patriots USA. And so I'm so fortunate that you brought us on to tell this story. And for everyone else who's bringing us on, I've reached out to other podcasters across the country, and we hope to have Sergeant Cano tell his story again and again and again, not only to raise funds for his lawsuit, which is so important, but also just to educate people and to spread this information so we can prevent more of this carnage from happening.
Yeah, and this is happening everywhere. I had the personal sniper. I forget what the Canadians call the basically their version of a Secret Service, but Trudeau's Secret Service personal sniper on the show because he was going through a similar thing because he refused to get the vaccine. I had him on with Dr. Jessica Rose, and yeah, I mean, this is happening everywhere. And the thing is, these stories need to be told, and the stories of all the adverse reactions. I know so many people in my personal life who have not felt good, who have not, have been hospitalized even after getting the vaccines, the boosters, and you can't, it's not to say that obviously people do have health issues just randomly, and it doesn't mean that the vaccine is linked to all of the health issues that happen from now on. But when you look at a experimental vaccine, something that has never been, a coronavirus vaccine has never been successful. We have never put out in public a mRNA vaccine, and you look at how many people took it, you can't ignore that. And then when you hear about insurance companies, I believe in Texas was one of the big insurance companies that talked about they saw a huge increase in deaths. So it's like in young, healthy people. So these aren't like typically the ages of people who would die from the coronavirus, from COVID. I mean, so you have to start connecting those dots. Obviously, all the athletes, soccer players, you're seeing it all over the place. People just having heart issues, wrestlers. I mean, all over the place. And it's like it is. You can make the argument that it's equally as, or you would be jumping conclusions to think that every health issue is the vaccine, but you'll also be jumping to conclusions if you think none of them are due to the vaccine. And I think we have to find that happy medium. I think what we all want is a investigation, some real research. People should be checked for the spike protein. People should be, I mean, there's none of that. People are having adverse reactions. They don't know where to turn. They don't know what to do. And they don't know who to blame because the vaccine companies have no liability. It's like, do you blame your employer who told you how to get it? I mean, I told a lot of people who were in similar situations because, again, like when your ability to travel is going to be affected by getting the vaccine, when your ability to feed your family is, and pay your bills are going to be affected by getting the vaccine. A lot of people just kind of gave in, and I would tell them, like, do not give in, because you can always catch up on your bills. You can always find another job. You can always, find a way to get by. But if you do end up having a adverse reaction to a vaccine, to prevent you from getting a disease that you have a 99.9% chance of survival, like those adverse reactions might be with you forever. You can get by, the catching up to your bills and maybe finding another job, starting another career. But I'm like, those adverse reactions will be with you forever. And you look at somebody like Kyrie Irving, like he didn't even have to wait that long. I mean, he missed like half of a season or 75% of a season, still got to play away games. And he knows that he has his health, that he didn't take a vaccine that could prevent him from playing future seasons or maybe ending his career. There's a very famous soccer player I'm a big fan of, Sergio Aguero, who played for Man City, went to Spain to play and couldn't even play his first season because a lot of people think it was vaccine related. And a lot of these international soccer players, because they travel so much, it seemed like the logical thing to do. Like, oh, let me just get the vaccine so I don't have to go through all these headaches of not being able to play here or play there. But the sergeant said, I think a lot of the numbers about how many people are vaccinated are complete bullshit, because you look at just recently, the Celtics and somebody else who might play Toronto in the playoffs in the NBA refused to disclose how many people on their team were unvaccinated, because there were some conversations about having some issues going to Canada and playing against them, and they wouldn't disclose it. So they paint this picture that everybody's vaccinated, and so to almost make you feel like, well, if everybody's saying it's safe and everybody's getting it, then I guess I should get it. And the truth is, there's a lot more people out there who are skeptical. There's a lot more people out there who didn't get it, and they're just not sharing those stories because, like you said, because of censorship. And that's why, like, the censorship issue, like the last 2 years, it's been such an important topic to talk about over and over and over again, because the truth is, and we've said this over and over again, the truth is, if we have a discussion with somebody and we tell them all the information we're sharing right now about possible adverse reactions, all this stuff, the fact that the virus is basically harmless for anybody who is a average healthy person, and yet, like, if somebody said, okay, hey, what they told me seems to make sense, let me go online and do my own research, they're not going to find anybody who is sharing this information. They're going to think that we are crazy because they're like, well, everything they said, they're like, I can't find any evidence of this. I can't find any of the research that they recommended. I can't find any doctors that are saying what they're saying, and you're force fed one side of the argument. And like I always say, like, give everybody all sides of the argument, all sides of the every perspective, then let them decide
right
which one makes the most logical sense.
Follow the money, as it has been said over and over and over again. When you Google something online, of course you're not seeing anything except pro-vax propaganda. I hear a lot of, especially people in older generations who just watch mainstream media, will say things like, well, that can't be true. If that were true, why am I not hearing it on the news? Why am I not hearing it on even Fox News or something like that? Even so-called conservative outlets. Why am I not seeing it? Well, follow the money. Why are you only hearing it on independent places like this, like your podcast, Ricky? I'll tell you very simply, because you're only hearing it on the shows that don't accept pharmaceutical dollars for advertising, for sponsorships. All of those mainstream media outlets are accepting not just some dollars, many millions of dollars in advertising dollars from the pharmaceutical industry. And so that's why you are not hearing it on any of those outlets, because the industry that created these shots, that profits from them, basically funds the media. The only places you're hearing it, surprise, surprise, are on independent media sources that don't take any money from those companies. So you would think this is very logical to people, and people would be able to connect the dots and understand that. That's like, I mean, this is like first grade level stuff, right? I mean, I'm not telling you anything that's really complex and difficult to understand. You can look at it. If you don't believe me that the pharmaceutical industry funds most of the mainstream media, turn on the nightly news sometime on ABC, NBC, CBS, any of them. Turn on the nightly news, at 6:30 p.m. And you will see, like, every third commercial is a drug commercial. All right. That answers it. If you think I'm a conspiracy theorist, just look at how many commercials are for drugs and tell me that I'm a conspiracy theorist.
I tell, because at my gym, they have TVs on the news all day, or ESPN or whatever. And I'll have a conversation with somebody. I'm like, if you don't think pharma has a influence on what that anchor is telling you, look at who's paying his salary. I'm like, just wait and just watch that TV for a little bit. It's pharma. Like, so those commercials are paying the salary of the guy who's supposed to be honest with you. Well, guess what? Like, he doesn't want to lose his house, or maybe he wants to buy a new yacht or a bigger house. He's going to keep his mouth shut, and he's going to say what they tell him to say and not say what they tell him not to say. And so you can't trust them. And the thing is, like, I don't understand why people have a easier understanding that the military industrial complex, when something becomes a business like war has become in the past, that we can all accept that there's when there's that much money in war, there's going to be ways of influencing policy. There's going to be ways of influencing politicians to get involved in certain conflicts or whatever. And it's like, we can all accept that, like the military industrial complex, bad. But the big pharma, who spends now more on lobbying than the military industrial complex, like it's like we're naive to the fact they have any influence on what's going on. It's like, if they can propose, if the military industrial complex can get politicians to vote for a war, or go to, get in a war, get involved in a conflict, why would you think big pharma couldn't have that same type of influence over politicians? Like, of course they can, and one of the most well-paid politicians, I don't call him a doctor, Dr. Fauci, is, he was making tons of money from vaccines, he had a huge influence over all, basically tons of different departments and stuff, and nobody would speak out against him. There's a story of Dr. Peter Duesberg, who is a very fascinating guy from the 90s, who he had some doubts about if the HIV virus caused AIDS, and was kind of skeptical of the AIDS epidemic and what was actually causing the deaths. And as we know, and Dr. Fauci was a part of that story with the AZT drugs and stuff like that. If people haven't watched Dallas Buyers Club, that was kind of influenced by the Dr. Fauci story and the suppression of other remedies and the pushing of the AZT drug, which was correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but it was chemotherapy drug, right? That they repurposed as a AIDS drug, and it was so lethal. Yeah, it was so lethal. It was killing cancer patients faster than the cancer. And then they're like, "What are we going to do with this? Oh, I guess we'll give it to AIDS patients." And so this guy has a long history of being a scumbag. And actually, you speaking Spanish, have you seen the interview he did with Eugenio, the Dr. Fauci and Eugenio? I think is he Mexican? I know he's from Latin America, but he did it's one of the best interviews. The only hard-hitting interview that Dr. Fauci took, and he accidentally took it because you could tell that he's like, wait, I didn't expect these questions, was with this Spanish speaking this Latin actor. I think he's an actor, comedian, Eugenio something. I can't remember his full name. And it's funny because this was a mainstream interview, and it's been ripped off the YouTube. And the only reason it was ripped off YouTube was because of the fact that it actually he exposed the flaws in the things that Dr. Fauci was saying. He was kind of just went in as a skeptical person, like, well, yeah, but if people have natural immunity, why do you need to get the vaccine? Like all these like logical questions. And Fauci was just kind of like stumbling on his words, not knowing how to answer. And apparently, so I watched the interview before Fauci came on the call, and he was saying that he was getting a lot of people from the Latin American community that were skeptical of the vaccine. So he wanted to ask him some of the questions that he's been asked, and it's just like, why aren't there more interviews like that? Why wouldn't he go on somewhere that's going to give him heart? And it's because there's no logic in the things he would say. I mean, even the things that the lies initially that the vaccine would stop the spread of it. It would stop, it would stop the pandemic. You don't have to wear a mask if you get vaccinated. I'm like, why wouldn't I have to wear a mask if it doesn't stop me from spreading it? It doesn't make any sense. Like I don't have to wear a mask, but I could still spread if I'm vaccinated. So it's like they were giving you every reason, every incentive to think that like if I get vaccinated, I get my life back. I don't have to wear a mask. I can travel. I can have my job. I can do all this stuff. And it's like, thank God there's people out there who are like, you know what, like some things are bigger than convenience. And people have to ask these questions. And the hardest part about doing this podcast was the information was out there, but the hardest part was getting the information to the people. I got banned off YouTube. If you Google the Ripple Effect podcast now, you get like a bunch of little Ripple Effect podcasts, other podcasts that are named the Ripple Effect or have Ripple Effect in the title, and you don't get my show anymore. And that's only happened since I got banned off YouTube. Prior to that, if you put in the Ripple Effect podcast, you put in my name, you would find everything. It's everywhere. And then once you get banned off YouTube, you get on a blacklist, and then they just blacklist you. But they've been doing this forever. Zach Voorhees, which I'm sure, Brian, you're aware of, he was a Google whistleblower, worked at Google. They were suppressing alternative medicines, cancer treatments. I mean, there's so many different terms, homeopathic medicines, cancer cures that they were suppressing. Anybody who had anything that went against modern medicine, they were suppressing. So this has been going on for a long time, and now it just got to the point where it got in our personal lives. But like I was telling Brian before you joined us, what was that I'm a little concerned that people are getting distracted again, and now people think this fight is over. Like everybody's we're good, we're just moving on from it. But these fights are continuing. There's still people who are, like Brian was saying, going back to universities and forced to have to get vaccinated. I mean, it's just in your perspective, Brian, and because obviously you get contacted by a lot of different people. Is there a light at the end of the tunnel? Do you think we're winning and people are finally realizing, like, hey, you look around, like this was all based on a pandemic that I'm not seeing. You look around, there is no pandemic. So it's like, why are we still forcing this experimental vaccine on the people?
I think we are winning in public opinion, in the court of public opinion, in the court of public perception. As far as waking people up, I think we've made huge gains, especially over the last year. The first year of COVID, people were really scared and people were just dying for the vaccine, and literally, unfortunately, many of them and being injured. But now that these injuries are coming to light, now that people are seeing that how unnecessary it is, and they're seeing the lies that they've been told by the government and by the pharmaceutical industry, by the media, I think a lot of people have woken up. We haven't won yet. Are we winning? Yes, but I think we need more precedent, because what's happening when we take our foot off the pedal like this, if we are to step back and just do nothing, then what's going to happen is the next time there's another variant that comes out, or a whole new virus, or a whole new pandemic, whatever you want to call it, comes out, and then there's new shots that are given, or vaccines, or whatever you want to call them, that come out, all of a sudden we're going to be fighting these battles from scratch all over again. We need to get the precedent on the books now, federal precedent and precedent at the United States Supreme Court, to say that this is not allowed under any circumstance, that not just for today, but for tomorrow as well, because you don't want to have to start from scratch all over again. Because look how long these battles take. You're talking about 2 years, 3 years, sometimes 4 years of litigation. You can't start them over all over again. So they will try to argue that it's moot now. Listen, we're not mandating anymore, or when there's no mask mandate, there's no shot mandate. They're trying to get a lot of our cases dismissed as moot, because they're saying it's not happening anymore, it's not relevant. But it is absolutely relevant, because as soon as the next threat, public health threat comes along, this is all going to be resurrected, and they want it to be dismissed so that we have to start off all the way back at the beginning again. And there's an exception in the law. So under the law, you can dismiss a case if it's moot. That is, there's several different elements for the court to have jurisdiction. For a plaintiff to have standing, that it has to be ripe for adjudication, meaning it's ready. The issues aren't just speculative, something's actually happening. But one of them also is that the issues aren't moot, that it hasn't already been resolved. So if it is moot, that is a legitimate basis to get a lawsuit dismissed if it's no longer relevant. However, there's some exceptions to the mootness doctrine, and one of them that I think is most relevant in this particular instance is capable of repetition yet evading review. Okay, if something has the capability of being repeated over and over and over again, but keeps escaping review by the courts, because every time, by the time it gets to those higher level courts, you stop what you're doing so that the courts dismiss it as moot, you can keep getting away with it. That's their little trick, but there's an exception written into the law and case law about capable of repetition yet evading review. And that's a very high bar for the government to meet in situations like this, and for employers to meet. So I think we have a strong argument to say that these are not moot. We're going to keep pushing. They're trying to get them dismissed as moot. They're doing this. This is political. Listen, it's an election year. All right. We have midterm elections. A lot of gubernatorial elections are coming up. I know in Connecticut, we have one. All right, this year. So this is a big election year for them. And they want to take the foot off the pedal, because obviously if it seems like everything's back to normal, and especially if those gas prices dip just in time, for summer vacation season, or for even for the fall, even by the fall, if they dip down and food prices dip down and there's no more mandates, everybody's gonna think we're back to normal. Yes, let's vote them back in, the same people that did this to us. And by the way, I'm not partisan. Our organization is not partisan. We're not a political, we're a nonpartisan organization, because both parties are responsible for this, both major parties. It's not the Democrat versus Republican thing. This is not a political issue, as much as they try to make it as a political issue. Because if it were, just look at how many people on both sides of the political aisle in Congress have supported these mandates. All right. And that will end. And I mean, so I don't believe that it's one party versus the other party. This is a problem in America. There's corruption at so many levels. And the fact, just to bring it back, I know we're in our final minutes, just to bring it back to Sergeant Canon. The fact that this has even infected the United States military, American heroes, these are the real heroes, people that have sacrificed, risked their lives, some of whom, of course, have given their lives, the ultimate sacrifice. But Sergeant Canon, who's put his life on the line, who could have been killed in those combat missions. Okay, he knows that. He went into it knowing that. He's got 5 children, and he still did it. Okay, he did it because he loves this country and he wants to defend freedom. He loves freedom. He loves the Constitution. He loves the fact that his children have a better life here than he had, and that his father had. All right, his children have a better life in this country because of what this country is. And we want to keep it this way. We don't want to be owned by China. We don't want to be owned by any other country, communist regime. We don't want, I mean, it's already infecting this country. If you look in our We the Patriots USA Telegram channel, we posted things just today about how they're setting this up. They're taking all the same steps to lead us into China, even the one-child policy. They did the same things. You have famine, food shortages, all those things. And what do you blame it on? You say, well, because there's too much population. So that's what they'll start blaming it on. That's why we have the food shortages. That it's not the supply chain issues that were manufactured, of course. They won't blame it on that. They'll say, oh no, it's just too much population, so we need to limit the population. They're going to try to implement that just like they did in China. That's not the country that he fought for, that he's been fighting for. One-child policy? You want that? And is that the United States? Well, guess what? It's not the United States either to put a muzzle on your face and to say you can't enter a place of business unless you have a muzzle, or unless you have a shot in your arm, you can't eat at this restaurant, or you can't work at this job. That's not the United States either. And, you bring it back, I'm gonna bring up every controversial topic today. You got me fired up now. Bring it. That doesn't take much. Ricky knows that, but I'll bring it back to the abortion issue either. I had a conversation with my friend Daniel Horowitz. I told you the other day, and he brought up a great point. He said, this is actually worse than the abortion issue. This is actually worse because you're mandating a medical procedure on people. It's not just you're saying you have the option to get it or not, or you're forbidding them from getting it or not. You're saying you have to get it. And in many cases, it is leading to injury, permanent injury, and death. So it's like you're mandating abortions on people. So it's actually worse than the pro-life issue, than the abortion issue. So even for those of you, your listeners who may be staunch pro-lifers, wake up. Okay, this is, and your listeners are awake anyway, but anyone who's not awake, wake up. This is the issue of our day. This is the most heinous, absolutely heinous acts of crimes against humanity, whatever you want to call it, that's being perpetrated on American citizens and on citizens worldwide, is these mandates, and it's not going to stop. They're going to keep bringing them back. We need to fight now to get the legal precedent on the books for people like Sergeant Cano, who have dedicated their lives to protecting us. We need to band together, people. Please, 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 if you can, donate at wethepatriotsusa.org to his cause and to all of the other legal efforts. We're fighting on behalf of a Washington, D.C. firefighter who is the sole provider for his 3 children, sole health insurance provider as well. And he's now facing a job loss. We just wrote an appeal letter from our attorneys on behalf of him. He's in his dream job as a first responder, as a firefighter. He's a career, like 28 years, I think, in firefighting between volunteer and doing it professionally. We need to stand up for these people. These are American heroes. I mean, he's another example. He would rush into a burning building to save you. Okay. Let's stand up for him. His name is William Dooley. Okay. So he's in Washington, D.C. Sergeant Cano is in New Mexico. We're fighting from coast to coast. We're fighting all over the place to stand up for freedom. And we just appreciate so much, again, Ricky, that you've had the both of us on today. And Sergeant Cano, again, thank you for your service. One last thing I want to say, you went into the military around the same time that my beloved business partner also went in, Dawn Jolly. She is a Navy veteran. She actually was sent out to boot camp on September 10th, 2001, excuse me, September 10th, 2001, the night before 9/11 is when she was deployed to boot camp. And she went in around the same time. You went in that summer, you said around August or something. You went in maybe a month before. But she got started on this because she was actually vaccine injured in the military. I think I told you that already. So you have that in common, though. You went in the same time. And again, I just thank you so much for everything that you've done in service of this country.
Yeah, and I think that big picture that you're talking about, the idea that, oh, well, the mandates are gone, this is mute, don't worry about it, just move on from it. Like you said, we have to see the big picture. If this happens again, then we need to, get this on the books where we're like, okay, people are, it's been resolved, it's been reviewed in the courts, it's unconstitutional, it's not right, and they make sure they can never do it again. Because like you said, once you give up power to the government, they never give it back, and they'll just keep doing it. And and unfortunately, people are really dumb. Like people fall for it over and over again. Every time like things got a little bit better, they just had to bring up a new variant, and people start freaking out again. And it's just like it boggled my mind. I mean, the lines of testing I would see locally, of cars down to the road of testing, especially during the holiday season, and I'm just like, all because the TV is telling you to be afraid. Like nobody is dying. Hospitals aren't filled. Like, and yet because the TV, and then all of a sudden you feel safe because the TV told you it's okay to be safe. We need more people who think for themselves. We need more people who can, it's like that saying, you watch the news, or if you don't watch the news, you're uninformed. If you do watch the news, you're misinformed. And people need to just be uninformed and stop being misinformed. And hopefully, I can do my part in helping get this information out there and share your story. And if people are listening, if you can financially help, please do, because of not just because of this specific story, but like Brian said, to help hopefully the future, if something like this happens, to get a W, a win in this battle, to show that it's unconstitutional and nobody should ever be forced to have, especially an experimental vaccine like that. So Sergeant, any last words, anything you want to share with us before we?
I do. I was reading an article recently, or someone mentioned to me about General Washington and that he mandated vaccine for smallpox. And I just couldn't help to chuckle to think, saying you are comparing yourself to someone who didn't accept a kingship. How many politicians today, if offered to be king, wouldn't jump on the opportunity? Don't compare yourself to General Washington.
Well, and people also bring up a lot that, what is it, Massachusetts versus you know what I'm talking about, Brian? The
Jacobson versus Massachusetts.
Yeah, but that story gets manipulated a lot, because didn't he refuse the vaccine because his child was initially harmed by a previous vaccine?
Correct. It was on the basis because there was a harm, and he himself had an adverse reaction, and he was originally in Sweden, and so that was he'd never even asserted a religious objection. That case has been completely bungled by all of these legal scholars now are pontificating that Jacobson applies to the current situation we're in now. It absolutely doesn't, because there was no religious liberty violation that was asserted there. It was a personal liberty interest that he believed just over his body. Okay. And at that time, of course, that was way prior to the line of cases like Griswold v. Connecticut, Roe v. Wade, Planned Parenthood v. Casey, who all talked about this bodily autonomy right. Those hadn't been decided yet. It was also prior to the incorporation doctrine. So that means the incorporation of the Bill of Rights to the states. At that time, they were considered to only apply to federal government mandates, not to states or local governments like the city of Cambridge, Massachusetts. So even if he had been asserting a First Amendment claim, it probably would have been struck down. But that's simply because it was pre-incorporation. People always leave that out. I hear legal scholars talk about that. They conveniently leave those things out. Most of the general public who's reading it is, the pro-vax people, rah, because they don't understand the law. They've never read the law. They don't know what the hell the incorporation doctrine is. They don't know the fact that Henning Jacobson wasn't even asserting a religious liberty claim. They haven't studied it. They haven't read the case. I've read it. I can't tell you how many times. It's not a long case. You can read it, over a cup of coffee. Read it 5 times over a cup of coffee. You can keep reading it. There's some great language. And the other thing they never quote from the Jacobson case is the concluding paragraphs. And there's something there in the conclusion where the court specifically says that, this decision, and I'm paraphrasing here, is not meant to basically give the government carte blanche authority to mandate anything, and to say that there'll never be a circumstance where we find that the government's not overreaching. And then there's even a line in there that says extreme cases can be readily suggested. So In other words, there's extreme cases where the government could really go out of bounds here, and what we're deciding today won't apply. They say that right in there. This doesn't give you, a free pass to do whatever you want. And the government's never going to be found to be wrong in mandating a vaccine. It's right in that decision, and yet nobody ever quotes that because they're always looking at it through this pro-vax lens, pro-government lens. It's not even just pro-vax. These legal scholars, when they're forming these opinions, it's pro-government, it's pro-control, it's anti-freedom, anti-religion. There's a lot of really, really, really disgusting, despicable people that have agendas that are misleading people on the law. The law absolutely doesn't say what they say it does. Jacobson absolutely doesn't say what they say it does. And we intend to prove that not only in cases like Sergeant Cano's, but also in our religious exemption case against the state of Connecticut. We filed both a federal and a state lawsuit against them for repealing the religious exemption. We intend to prove that very strongly all the way up to the United States Supreme Court.
Yeah, people like Alan Dershowitz refers to it all the time, and I'm like, you're leaving some important parts out. He referred, the government, it's been proven with Massachusetts versus Jacobson. Look, that they can force you with. It's like, he leaves out the fact that that he was skeptical because of a adverse reaction. He leaves out the fact that he was fined, but I think it was like the equivalent of like $5. It was something like minimal, which I think that many people in America, if their options were being fined, or then they'd be okay with just being fined.
It was a $5 fine, but it was equivalent to like $100 today.
Oh, okay. So that's what it was. Okay. So yeah, $5.
But I mean, a $5 fine, he didn't lose his livelihood over it. He didn't get jailed for it. He didn't get thrown out of society and locked down into his house because of it. All right. It's not even remotely analogous, in my opinion. And smallpox was really killing people. It really was something that was a threat. It wasn't like 99.7 or 99.8, whichever statistics you look at, it wasn't that kind of a survival rate. So you're comparing apples and oranges. Maybe there's even a better comparison, better analogy to use, but it's certainly not even a close comparison. But yeah, thanks again, Ricky, for having me on. As always, we really appreciate it, and we'll keep fighting.
Yeah, and send me any links that you want to put in the show description. I'll put links, obviously, to your website where they can donate if they want. If Sergeant Cano's, if you're on any social media platforms, Twitter, anything like that, feel free to send those to me. I'll put that in the show description too, so people can keep up with your story, connect with you if they would like. And thank you so much for your bravery and here and overseas, both places, because this is obviously you get in the military because you have you're a fighter naturally, and obviously you're just continuing being a fighter for fighting what you think is right. Just I think you never intended on fighting your own military for this. Yeah. So but it like Brian said, it is important regardless how much we feel like we can move on from it. And again, a lot of people have been traumatized by the lockdowns, by being isolated. Human beings. You're Mexican, I'm Portuguese. Brian, I don't know what your nationality is, but one thing we all have in common, regardless of your nationality, is we love to be together with families and friends and eating together and conversating, and they took that away from us.
Definitely eating together. I'm Italian American, so definitely eating. but all of our cultures love eating, right?
Yeah. Well, and it was such an important thing, like for mental stability, being around other people and laughing and sharing ideas. I mean, like you called the mask a muzzle. That's exactly what it was. They didn't want us talking, because when we started talking, we would start connecting the dots. Like, you're right, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Oh, you're right, that doesn't make any logical sense. And it's like you start sharing ideas. Oh, have you read this? I think this guy's a liar. I think this statistic is wrong. And I think that's why it went on for so long. And so many people who are dealing with adverse reactions, are dealing with psychological issues. Depression went up. People losing small businesses. Like, there's all these casualties to the lockdowns that nobody wants to talk about. And it's like, to me, it's like we have to make sure we continue talking about this, because somebody has to be responsible for this. Somebody has to pay, in some way, because of what happened. We can't just move on from it and say, all these casualties, all this horror and awful things that came from the lockdowns and enforcing the vaccines and isolating people, to pretend that like, we can just move on from that. Like, some people aren't moving on. Some people were alcoholics or addicts who needed to go to their meetings every week, or people who needed the community they were getting from the churches or whatever, and you stole that from people. And to pretend like, oh well, there's next year. Well, for some people there wasn't next year. A lot of us lost loved ones the last couple of years and didn't have a proper funeral. They weren't able to say goodbye the way that they should have, because of these ridiculous mandates and all this stuff. So now I'm getting worked up and fired up. So I mean, it's hard not to. It is. But go ahead.
On the mental stability, when you were mentioning when on my third deployment, we went to Afghanistan and we were being attacked, and that's where you needed the brotherhood. When you're getting attacked, at least for me, I had that frozen ice block in my stomach, that frozen fear that starts spreading to your legs and to your arms, and you can't move. And CW3, he says, Sergeant Cano, are you good? Yeah, I'm good. Okay, let's move. And, I needed that to help me get out of harm's way.
That's so important. Yeah.
Absolutely. God bless you. Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, guys. Buenas noches. Have a great rest of the day, a great night. Hopefully we'll all talk again in the future, and good luck with everything. And hopefully I can do my part in helping out any way I can.
Thank you, Ricky.
Thank you, guys. Gracias. Ciao.
Ricky, can we stay on for just 1 minute?
Yeah, sure.
The recording, we can stop it, but I just want to ask.